Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Capital Improvements and Street Maintenance Committee for the City of Wausau meeting for Thursday, October 13th. We will begin with approval of the minutes from the September 8th meeting. Is everybody okay with those? If so, I'll take a motion.
I would move to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
A second.
Okay, motion has been by Alder Denny and second by Alder Henke to approve last month's meeting minutes. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. And with that, we move on to agenda item 2, public hearing for discussion and possible action on amending the official city map for the realignment of 28th Avenue from Hilltop Avenue to West Wausau Avenue. Is there anybody here that would like to comment on that? Please come on up forward to the mic.
Okay, I'm from Wausau Child Care, the foundation that owns the building. And a long time ago, when I was on the Wausau Child Care Board, I saw a map that changed our access to our building. What I'm asking is, does this change the access to the building off of 28th?
Eric, do you have an answer for that?
Yeah, I think if we take the public comment and the public hearing, we'll
Okay.
attempt to answer
Okay.
the questions after.
Thank you.
Okay.
Could I get your name and address for the record, please?
Ann Dietrich, Dietrich, 3024 North 10th Street.
Thank you.
Hi, I didn't have so much of a comment as...
Would you state your name and address
Yeah,
in Raleigh?
Sure, it's Roland Corsten. The address is 806 North 29th Avenue. And our property is adjacent to the, the road in question back there, when the highway was proposed to be running through there. And I guess the only comment that I had, it was more a question of, what are the final plans for that? And I suppose that's what we're here for. But, has anything changed from what the original plans were back, when they vacated some of that property?
I think the reason we're here is the official city mapping is being revised. And so in the packet, there's some information. If you have a couple of questions, we'll write them down, and then our staff will be able to answer.
Okay, sure.
All right.
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
Is that all? Okay.
Okay, so we move on to the next. No one else here to comment on that? Eric, then you have the questions?
Yeah, probably.
So, if you remember back, oh yes, close the public.
We have to close the public hearing. Anybody else care to speak on the public? Okay.
Hi, my name's Tim Holzum. I live on 729 North 29th Avenue, and actually, we live on the property which we had an easement cut off on the corner of our land, so pretty much where that road was going. I guess mine is just another question. With this change, with the city plans, does that not exist anymore, or is it still going forward, or are you guys going to comment on that later in this meeting?
Yeah, we'll go over the details. Okay, so we'll jot that question. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other public comment on agenda item 2? If not, then I guess we will close the public hearing And then we'll go to discussion and possible action and answer the questions. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, we'll go to item number 3, discussion and possible action on amending the official map for the realignment of 28th Avenue.
So I can answer a few questions. I guess just a little bit of background. This was originally mapped, or when the county was going to go through with this road, it was a 4-lane roadway. It was brought in front of this committee a couple months ago that, the county has since abandoned those plans to build this, and the city was looking to go to a 2-lane corridor, and SISM approved going ahead with a 2-lane corridor. So a 2-lane roadway. So what we looked at here was the right-of-way that we would need, or the official city mapping, to maintain a 2-lane roadway going up this segment. So what the official city mapping here is proposing is to remove some of the property that's shaded in the gray, remove that off the official city mapping. Now, why we're doing that is the existing right-of-way in those areas we feel is adequate to build a 2-lane facility, so that there's really no reason to map any additional property in that area, because we know there was some of those sites there we're looking to develop or remodel, and it was kind of, it was creating some issues with that. So staff has looked at it, and we can build a 2-lane roadway through there, especially by Madonna and Westwood. We have enough right-of-way there to build a 2-lane facility, so we don't need to reserve that anymore. So basically, and then you can see up off 29th Avenue, there were a couple corners of those properties there that had some official city mapping. We'd like to remove those too, because we're confident we can fit a 2-lane roadway in there without those, putting the official city mapping on those 2 parcels. So at this point, I don't know if anyone, well, also there was a question with the Wausau child care access, and, at this point, whether it went, it stays as it is, or a 2-lane, we don't anticipate the access to the Wausau child care changing. And what was the other question?
So I think there's 2 private parcels on 28th Avenue, Al, that initially had some official city mapping on them that encumbered the corners of those properties, and that's going to be removed.
Correct, yes.
So, yep, those will be removed.
They would be removed as part of this official city mapping revision.
Yeah.
And how soon would this, is this in the early stages of planning, or is this a year down the road, 2 years down the road?
There's no plans for, we don't have a time frame for that's something that engineering and we'll be bringing back to this committee to discuss what we want to look at for the future. How soon you want to build this, if you want to build it, and so those are all questions that have to be answered yet. But by approving this official city mapping, we still have the corridor to do a 2-lane roadway through there.
Okay, so would you be looking for a motion to approve this 2-lane corridor this evening?
Well, not necessarily the 2-lane corridor, but the amendments to the official city mapping is what we'd be looking for a motion for.
Okay. Yes, Lisa?
Thank you. This actually, I think, represents a best-case scenario under the circumstances. The county, as we discussed in our prior meeting, really did disappoint the city with its reversal on its plans for County Highway R and the related infrastructure. We planned a lot of our both roadways and stormwater plans around that project, and then, they up and pulled the plug. So I think this, though, reserving a narrower strip through there does really keep our options open, but it also removes the encumbrances on the private property that had concerns to start with. So I think it does leave us some options. We aren't on any timeline to build there, but I think if we need to construct an alternate route, reserving that land now with the official city map makes sense. That would prevent the issuance of building permits in the area, in the corridor, so that nothing constructs in the path, should we need to use it. So I'll make a motion that we approve the amendments to the official city map.
Yes, Alder Hinkie.
I'll second it, but before we vote on it, I got some comments too.
Go ahead.
So the 2 lots will be square again. All of our easements through those 2 lots will be done.
Correct, the official city mapping will be removed off those two lots.
Okay. And I just want to say, I get a lot of phone calls about 28th Avenue, this being in my district. I just drove up it today. It's in rough shape. We should prioritize getting this looked at and upgraded. The pedestrian traffic and traffic, or vehicle traffic is horrendous right there. Thanks.
Staff plans to bring back some alternatives to, a build or a no-build alternative, or some options on this within the next couple months.
Okay. Motion has been made by and seconded to approve the city changes to the map. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And there is none opposed. That passes. We will move forward with that then. Item number 4 is discussion and possible action on parking restrictions on Cedar Street between North 3rd Avenue and North 4th Avenue. I see,
Lou,
Yes.
before we move on, I think there's some question. I don't know if you're thinking of the process. Is that the question? So the process on the official city mapping, Al, does this go to Plan Commission then? And then it goes on to council, correct?
Yes, it'll go with Plan Commission, then council, and then the new map will be recorded.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I ask a question?
No, that would,
Okay.
go ahead.
I guess, like, what are the chances that this ends up, like, it's been tossed around from everybody that I've talked to that we don't know if this is going to happen, if it is going to happen, actually. So let's say we go with the scenario that it doesn't happen. What happens with those parcels behind? So the areas that are in red, like pretty much where I live on 29th, you have all the residential on this side, on the west side of 29th, but the parcels that are empty beyond, would those ever be up for sale at any point in time if you guys abandon the project entirely?
yeah, I think, first of all, they're official city right-of-way right now. And so, but if you have specific questions about potentials, I'd encourage you to talk to the engineering office.
Okay.
At that point, so, moving forward, okay? We'd be
Awesome.
happy to set up a time to meet with you. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, yeah, you bet.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll move on to agenda item 4, discussion and possible action on parking restrictions on Cedar Street between North 3rd Avenue and North 4th Avenue.
Yep, so this is in the packet. It's pretty self-explanatory, I think, when we just enacted these, or SISM just voted on these in April. However, the church has had, obviously, the petition that's enclosed here. They are not in, they want to see the no parking this side of street that's now marked from November 1st to April 1st. They are not in favor of that, and they want that removed. And that's what the petition was, and they may have some other requests too, but, so I from what I understand, they're okay with the no parking here to corner, leaving that red, which I would concur with that. If you come off of 3rd Avenue and make that turn, I would concur that we don't want the parking in that red area on the map, but the no parking, which is in the yellow on the map, I guess, hear from the church on that, or what your guys' feelings are on that.
Yes, Lisa.
Thank you. So when we designated this in April, it was because there was a request, or a number of requests from within the neighborhood to solve traffic and parking problems, especially in the winter when the roads are narrow. The DPW was having a hard time getting the plow through there when those cars were sitting on both sides. There was trouble with garbage collection trucks making the turn when people were parked on both sides. And that's why we agreed to restrict this only during the snow season. And so for the other 7 months of the year, they're free to park there whenever they want. And I thought when we had looked at this, according to the minutes, that I know Cord looked at it and Alan had looked at it, and I thought they reached out to the church, and the church's request at the time was that we preserve and protect the loading zone so that people can be dropped off to gain access to the elevator on the south side of the building. But I believe they expressed indifference to the parking to the west of that area up to 4th Avenue. So, when I looked at the petition that I had in the packets, 80% of those signatures don't reside in District 8.
Right.
The problem is for the people who are living around here, and the designated handicap access point is on the north side of the building through their parking lot. And so Alder Watson had communicated that she had taken a tour of the facility and that the access available from the north side through the building under the portico is actually the safest place for people who are differently able to unload and access the building versus trying to do that in the street where there's no access aisle and there's no accommodations for folks that, you know, maybe not perfectly ambulatory. So I guess I'm concerned that we aren't even trying this for one winter. I think we need to try it for this winter and see if it solves the problem before we just pull back. So,
Thank you, Alder Rasmussen. I'm in full agreement. When I was on, you and I were on the SISM committee back then, and you know, we had just recently went to one side of the street parking on Grand Street because of the same issue about people not being able to get down the street. If emergency vehicle had to get down there, it'd be hard. And I'm in full agreement with you. Any other discussion? Alder Denny, Alder Henke?
I just would like to have Lori put in the record that Sarah sent out an email, basically paraphrasing exactly what both of you just said. So the alder in that district.
Would you like to read that email?
I can.
Okay, because I know she asked.
It's a long one. I've spoken with residents in the area as well as a few of the congregants and employees at the church. Several congregants took me on a tour of the facility, and it is a lovely church. I did notice that although the Cedar entrance is closest to the elevator, from what I recall, all the entrances do allow access to the elevator in a handicap accessible manner. I hope that the committee will keep the parking restrictions in place at least for a year to try out this new parking configuration. I've noticed and have been told by other residents in the neighborhood that during the winter months, when all the city streets become narrower, that Cedar Street becomes very troublesome when there's parking on both sides. There's been many times where service vehicles or delivery trucks have to double park on that stretch, making that portion of Cedar Street impassable. Additionally, during the winter, with parking on both sides, it is only passable by one vehicle at a time. Cedar Street is a main artery in the neighborhood, and many use it to travel from 3rd Avenue all the way to 12th Avenue and to get to other main arteries like 4th Avenue or to the elementary school. I'd hope that we could try out the new parking option for at least one winter season. I believe that the neighborhood and the congregation will see some positive side effects that we may not be able to anticipate at this time. One other ask I do have after tour and talking with the congregants and staff of the church is if there's a way to make the signage clearer. I can see some may find them confusing as to where and when they can park on that side of the street. And that's basically it.
I see we have some public comment on this. Would you like to?
Can I just ask a quick question?
Oh, yes, Alder Denny.
So I'm just reading the petition. So it seems there's a little conflict between what you're saying and what they're understanding, because it seems like they're indicating their only access is through this Cedar Street. And I assume that these people don't live in the neighborhood, but they're members of the congregation. So I'd be interested in hear why there's a conflict.
Ma'am, state your name and address, please.
Sherry Abbots. I'm at 1201 South 7th Avenue in Wausau. I am not a member of the church, but one of the members did approach me in figuring out how they can get this resolved. So I have a couple of points here that I wanted to bring up. And I have two other members that are going to be speaking after me as well. There is no issue with a no parking from the loading zone to the corner on 3rd Avenue. That's what their original request was, that there would be no parking from that loading zone until 3rd Avenue. They have no issue with that whatsoever. The issue is going forward from the loading zone until 4th Avenue. The problem is, and they had no issue with changing the loading zone to make it in accordance with the ordinance. They have no issue with that. issue is with the seasonal parking as well as access to the handicap parking, to the handicapped elevator, as well as for loading and unloading in that area. This original was not included in the packet by Jim Wazinski, where he said the seasonal winter parking is not in the original packet, and you approved it, even though it was not in the original packet. So I want to know why it was added into that discussion at that time. Also, since the only entrance to the church is Monday through Friday, is off of Cedar Avenue, the hours are 8 to 5, and on Thursday, they have church service, which is a handicap parking. And the only way that they can get to their church service on Thursday night is, for the handicap, is to use the elevator at that entrance. If there is a funeral that is scheduled at that time as well, at the church, they have no access to get to the elevator. They have to go through the sanctuary in order for them to get to the elevator. It's not like they can go down a hallway and go down the steps and go around the corner and go up to the elevator in order to get downtown, to get downstairs. They have to go through the sanctuary in order to get to the elevator. So it's not an easy task. So if there's an event that is going on, there's a funeral going on, there's a wedding going on, they have no way for those individuals to get down to another function that they are trying to get to in the basement. They have to go through the church service. The other one is on the north side, where the entrance is. It's a business. The church is a business. They are open Monday through Friday and weekends in order for them to be able to service as a business. Why would you decide to put no parking on that side of the street for those individuals that have disabilities, handicaps, elderly, that need to get in order to make use of that elevator? Why did you have to do it on the north side? Why couldn't you put no parking on the other side of the street? There's normally only 2 cars that park on the other side of the street. Now you're forcing these people to park on the other side, cross the street, in order for them to be able to go into the church, who are handicapped, able, or elderly, in order for them to be able. That is a safety hazard. This is not in accordance with the ADA. We also have another area where if they are coming out there and they do park in the main parking lot in the back, that means they have to walk a block around the church in order for them to be able to get use of that elevator, in order for them to be able to go into the church. That means they are now dealing during the wintertime in inclement weather. They're dealing with rain, they're dealing with snow, they're dealing with ice, and you're expecting these disabled, handicapped, elderly people to be able to walk down that sidewalk a block in order to make use of that elevator. So for them to be able to say that it's okay for you to say they can go through that church entrance at the main parking lot entrance, it's not. They can come in, but what are they going to do during the other services? For a funeral, do you think the other people that are having a funeral are going to appreciate a bunch of people coming through their church so they can make use of the elevator in the back? I don't think so. I think that's very inconsiderate of these other people, just so that you can have it, so that your plows and your garbage people can be able to make use of it. Why can't you have it on the south side of the street? Why do you have to have it on the north side of the street? The other issue is they are in agreement with having no parking from the loading zone back to the corner. That gives it more than enough area for the trucks to come around in order to pick up the garbage, as well as the plows to make it around the corner. It's not that they're going to be parking every day from the loading zone up until 4th Avenue either. They don't do that every day either. But you don't see all the cars on the south side of the street either parking over there. Every day that I've been over there so far to be able to see anything is there's only been 2 cars over there. Why do you have to have it on the north side where there's no parking? So those are some of the questions that I have had with the discussion here. The way that when I talked to Sarah seemed to be understanding completely different than what she wrote in the letter when she had her discussion with us. So I don't know where Sarah decided to change her mind. She did not come across that way when she had our discussion with us So I will have two of the other members come up and talk to you as well on their viewpoints on this whole situation.
Thank you.
My name is Deborah Kleetz, K-L-U-E-T-Z, and I live at 2711 Wyland Avenue, number 2 in Weston. I'm the parish administrator at First English Lutheran Church. I see people come to our church during the week on a daily basis. These are usually members of the congregation, but we do have many visitors as well. The City of Wausau's decision to remove all parking on the north side of Cedar Street between 3rd and 4th Avenue would pose a definite inconvenience to our congregation. My office is located through the door at on Cedar Street. This is the main entrance into our building during the week. All other church doors are locked except for Sunday morning worship and Sunday school, or if a funeral or wedding should arise. The Cedar Street entrance has a security system, and those wanting to come into the building must be buzzed in and let in by me. This entrance is where the elevator is located and is crucial for those who need the help to get from floor to floor. Deliveries are also made at this entrance, as well as pickups for and from the church. On an average, a month looks like committee meetings, church council meeting, women's circle meetings, book club, quilters, and many more. This list does not include those who come into the building who are not involved in these groups, yet need to come and see me or our pastor. Every Friday evening, First English hosts a local Narcotics Anonymous group. They use the Cedar Street entrance. First English has a food pantry, which is located down the hall from my office. Those who need the pantry use the Cedar Street entrance. Having no parking on the north side of Cedar Street would deeply impact all who are a part of our fellowship and service groups, as well as all others who enter the building, especially during the winter months. Our hope is for this committee and the City Council to reconsider the parking restrictions on Cedar Street. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sharon Hunter, and I'm the Vice President of our Church Council, and I do not live in the city. My address is 231256 Shenandoah, Shenandoah Ridge Road in Wausau. And I do want to address the petition. Yes, it's 100 members from our congregation that did sign the petition, because we're coming and going to the church all during the week to attend committee meetings and participate in activities. So that's why we thought it was important that they sign the petition, because, again, we're all parking on the south side of the church because the doors are locked on the north side. We did look into cameras to put on the north side of the church for security purposes. You all know we want our churches locked. There's vandalism. There are homeless people who may come into the church to stay, to seek shelter, and our facility is not set up for that. However, we do have the food pantry there that we try to assist low-income families with. But it's very important to consider that we are willing to have the parking signs from the loading zone to 3rd Avenue. We understand the importance for the plows to get through, for the garbage to be picked up. But we don't understand why we have to have the parking signs west of the loading zone. And then we were under the impression, when you did pass this in April, that we weren't going to have to, have those signs up west of that loading zone. That's why no one was here. We didn't think it was a concern. And then all of a sudden, we come to church one morning or one activity, and we see the parking signs up there. So we're here to ask for you to reconsider. We understand safety is important. Safety is important to us, but we also want to make sure our members have access to our church, and we want them to be safe. If nothing else, could we at least have 2 handicap parking spots on the south side by Cedar Street? There is, where the loading zone is, and I'm not going to explain this correctly, there is a ramp, so, wheelchairs could access Cedar Creek easily if there were handicap parking spots just west of that loading zone area. So again, we thank you for allowing us to submit a petition, for speaking this evening, and we really hope that you will reconsider where those parking signs are. Thank you.
Yes, Lisa.
Thank you. So part of the trouble we have is we have a large congregation with high volume activity, and that's why the parking has become a problem in District 8. My understanding is that, and first, let's say, the question came up, well, why do we need a no parking zone on the north side of the street for half that block? Well, be the snowplow for a second. Once the snowplow comes around the corner at 3rd and Cedar, it's stuck there. If you go half a block and both sides are parked full and you can't get through, it's either not going to get plowed or they can't get through. That's the trouble that they have with the access. Same thing happens as if you are a very large garbage truck. Once you're around the corner, you're in it. So, and I think that's what we were trying to accommodate. I guess I would be curious how often there is conflict between church activities and events in the sanctuary. I mean, if this is a daily event or if this is occasional, the facility has ample parking in its north parking lot. And, we had a similar concern. You'll recall, I want to say a couple years ago, we were asked by Marathon Electric to designate handicap parking stalls on Randolph Street. And we denied that request, partially because they have parking lots that they can do it in, but there was no effective way for us to designate safe handicap zones. You have to cut into the curb and create access aisles. This is expensive to do, and we don't have a duty to provide, the municipality doesn't have a duty, as I understand, to provide handicap parking stalls on street when facilities have off-street parking and parking lots. So, you tread down a slippery slope if you start to try to find a way to reconfigure Cedar Street to build in handicap stalls, because that is a difficult proposition. It was difficult when we added them out in front of City Hall here. It was a total modification of the infrastructure. It wasn't just painting lines or something. So, I guess I have some concerns over not even trying this. I think we need to try it. We haven't even got one winter under our belts yet.
Yes, Ms. Abbots.
Can I interject? We also have no parking right over there by the Grand Avenue that is designated for disabled handicap parking on the side street. Alan, do you remember what that street is? That's not Washington, it's
It's Jefferson Street.
Jefferson. So they do have handicap on that street as well, and that's in front of a business, as what the church is.
Yes, Alder
Sure.
Dini.
I don't recall, did we discuss at all designating the south side of Cedar as no parking? Was there a reason we picked the north side? It seems that it wouldn't, if we're just trying to protect one side, the south side would be the easier to.
I don't recall, is it in the minutes?
This information certainly makes me inclined to change my mind on this.
Any further discussion?
Can I just interject that on the south side, there are only 2 residents, and they both have driveways where their cars can park? So yes, if we didn't understand either why the parking sites couldn't be on the south side of the street. So thank you.
Because it appears that there's an alleyway there, so there would definitely be
I thought part of our discussion in April with those houses across the street was their ability to see to get in and out of their driveway.
Yes, correct.
And to get their garbage picked up, because if their garbage is being picked up in the driveway approach, and then I thought that was part of the issue.
I believe so.
I'm just going to. I'm just trying to understand this. So, if you were concerned with if it would be no parking on the south side of the street, they would be able to identify better where the garbage cans are. the garbage cans from the church are always put out by where the loading zone is. So if you have no parking on the south side of the street, it would be a straight shot for the garbage as well as for the plows to be able to come straight down. They are not putting them in the street. Even if they put them in the alley, they would still have access to it. So I agree with Alder Denny that I don't understand why you would have it on the north side when you only have, most of the time, the individuals that are at the apartments are parking in the driveway rather than on the street.
I think part of the reason was to keep it all continuous on one side because you have no parking here to corner on that for, about a third of the block. So if you move no parking to the other side, you're losing one whole side plus another third of a block. So I think it was just to keep it continuous on one side was the thinking back then. Because, if you take it away on one side and put it on the other, effectively you're losing almost the whole block then,
Thank you, Alan.
I would to be honest with you, Lori, did you send out this to the other side of the street too? And so I guess, the way that this was presented, I guess the other side of the street, the way this was presented wasn't shown in here as putting, the parking restriction on their side when this maps were sent out. So I guess I would hesitate to put no parking on the other side at this meeting just because the other side of the street, there was no indication of that in the maps and the stuff that I sent out. So I think you might run into the same problem again if you put in there. So I guess what you do on this side of the street, but I guess if you want to put no parking on the other side of the street, I guess I would recommend it comes back.
I feel like 7 months of the year, this is not a problem. This is not a problem for 7 of the 12 months of the year. And, we've not even tried this to give it the benefit of the doubt. So, if the resident complaints, my understanding was that Alder Watson's residents were complaining about the fact that both sides were parked full. It wasn't just the north side. So,
Correct.
they're talking about it being impassable where you can only drive in the middle. So regardless of where we take parking from, we're upsetting people's current park or the parking arrangement to which they've become accustomed. And someone somewhere is going to have to modify behaviors either way.
And if we wanted to move the parking restriction to the other side of the street, that'd be a whole different meeting. We'd have to have whole different stuff. And I guess I'm with you, Alder Rasmussen. Mark that on the calendar. We haven't even tried this a year, and it comes with the recommendation from the alder person from that district. So if there isn't any other further discussion, I guess I would take a motion, or was a motion made already?
Well, if our consensus is that we don't want to make a change until we see what the winter brings, we wouldn't have to take any action. We could hold and see what we get back in the spring. We could certainly reevaluate once we have a winter of trash collection and snow removal with this arrangement. We could certainly then get in touch with the plow crew for the area and consider other modifications.
So then have no action.
That'd be what I guess I would prefer now, because we've not even given this a trial.
I agree.
What would it take to petition or to survey the other side? I mean, it seems like the highest traffic area is the church side. And I mean, I certainly looking back on it, maybe it was, we didn't have all the information, but we changed habits all over. We just did 3rd Street. We just did a piece of Grant Street. So, I mean, this happens. We have parking signs, and then we take them out. I think we'd be better off to try to get it right. We have another month before we commit to this.
Well, we don't do it really with whiplash effect like this, though. I mean, the situation surrounding Athletic Park has been parking arrangements that either have been signed and weren't in the code and needed to be cleaned up, or to resolve long-standing issues. But we didn't put signs in and then go back 4 weeks later and yank them out and move them around. I mean, we at least wait to see how something works before we redirect so quickly. I don't know.
Well, we don't always have 100 people come in and ask us for reconsideration either.
Well, it would be hard for me to believe that the level of conflict between the activities and the other activities in the sanctuary as far as large-scale events is that common. And, I don't know, I guess I would just like to see us try this and see how this goes before we upset the whole thing. Again, snow season starts Friday. I mean, we're.
Yes. So, we table it then and see how it goes this winter? Okay.
I would move that we consider changing take a look at the south side and bring it back to the next CISM meeting, if that's a motion. At least we'll get a vote on it.
We have a motion by Alder Denny. Do we have a second?
I'll second just so we can vote on it.
Okay. Motion and made by Alder Denny and second by Alder Hinkie. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
It's 2-2.
I said no.
Oh, 2-3. Okay. 1-3. So. I guess so. So, onward to, thank you all for coming tonight and voicing your opinion.
Just explain what happened here, just in a nutshell, what happened here. What did you decide on?
What we decided on is to leave the current parking restrictions that we, in place for this winter to give it a try.
So then it'll be on the agenda next April, or do we have to come back and request that it be on the agenda?
I'm assuming we will have to, after we get a report from our snowplow crew and
I
such, and
think we could probably, with our decision now, we could direct staff to monitor the situation for the winter and just report back to us in the spring. I think
Sure.
Dustin could probably give us a quick report with the experience, would be helpful. And maybe we could make sure that we get that to Sarah too then.
Yeah, and then at that time, if you want to make any changes, we can bring it back.
That would be a good time.
Do you want the church's feedback as well as,
If it is discussed again, all the residents, including the church on the street, will get a notification.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, on to agenda item number 5. Discussion and possible action on parking restrictions on Single Avenue, Prospect Avenue to Gingrich Street. And that is.
Yeah, this one should be pretty straightforward. These parking signs exist. They're around that curve. It makes, but they are not in an ordinance. So what this action would be doing would just be making the code match up with the signs. And I would recommend we do that because we don't want people parking around that curve, especially on the end of that Excelsior Drive. So that'd be my recommendation to put
Okay.
these signs into ordinance.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
A move to approve is Alder Hinkie.
Rasmussen.
I had a comment.
Oh,
Sorry. Did we put these signs in?
Yeah, they were put up by DPW, but they were never
Okay.
voted on by this committee.
Okay,
So,
just making sure someone isn't running around putting signs
nope,
up.
they were put up by us.
Okay.
Okay. Motion was made to take the staff recommendation of approval and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? None opposed? On to agenda item 6. Discussion and possible action on parking restriction on, discussion and possible action on parking restrictions on Excelsior Avenue south of Single Avenue. Is that fella here that
Yes, so I met with the resident at 817 Excelsior Drive. So he's, the map, you can see 817 is kind of blocked out, but you can see it's right in the corner there, that triangular shaped lot. And the concern, and he can probably speak for himself, but was just the parking that goes on Excelsior Drive. And just for reference, and you can see it in the pictures, I hope, Excelsior Drive does not have curb and gutter. It's just grass, so, and I can if you allow the
Sure,
gentleman
go
to
ahead.
speak.
Thank you. Ryan Hawkins. I live at 817 Single Avenue. There's a huge issue with the park not having parking, so everyone will park along Excelsior, and they'll park like right in front of my driveway. I can't get out. I've called the police a few times about it. It's just an ongoing issue. And then the Bull Falls Brewery will have an event, and you can't even get in there. There's so many cars. So I was hoping they could put up some no parking. A lot of people dump their trash there too. Last year it was all Christmas trees. So there's a lot of issues over there.
You say there's a park there?
Yep, it's across the street.
Oh, that little, yeah, that
Yep.
little park.
So, and that's where there's no parking on the corner all the way down. And it's so the semis can get through, because there's two businesses down Excelsior, but they can't get through if everybody's parked on that side of the road. So they have to overturn it, and then they come through my yard. And they take out the stop sign and everything in the way.
It is a difficult turn there for semis, I can verify that. I knew that stop sign has been knocked down, or they had to move it back, because there are industrial uses on the end of Excelsior Drive. What I have marked on the map in red is the end of the public right-of-way. Beyond what I have marked red is private property.
I guess, is there any comments from the committee? Yes,
Are you the only house with a driveway?
There's two houses that
Okay.
have the driveway back there. But
Okay.
that's it. Otherwise, it's the two businesses back there.
Yeah, I just pulled up a map. I see that quick. Okay.
And there is no drainage. We have issues with flooding over there.
Welcome to my world.
Yeah.
I guess myself, I have a problem with this because, I live in a district where we have lots of no streets with no curb and gutter, and we have the same problem that you do. With people parking on our grass and with no drainage and stuff, and I really hate to set a precedence, because if we say we offer no parking for you, then I can have the dozens of streets and the people saying we don't want any parking on our street either because we have parking on our grass and stuff. And I from my personal point, there's other ways of rectifying this, and that is, first of all, if the cars are parked on your grass, you call the police, they'll come over and ticket it. And second of all, I've seen people in my district who put up like the little poles with the reflective on them and stuff. And
It's more so, though, across the street from me on Excelsior. It's
So-
not really in my yard.
so who owns the land across the street?
It's the city, I assume.
That and the railroad, it looks like it butts
Yeah.
up to the tracks.
Yep, and they pull up there, they'll dump trash down the hill. The Bull Falls will have all the cars park over there. And then the semis can't get fully through, so they have to come through my yard. That's my issue, is the semis coming through the yard. I've got two little kids that play in the yard, and I don't.
What's the right-of-way width of Excelsior? Is it two 12-foot lanes, or what? It doesn't look,
It's not very big. And it didn't used to have a name.
Yeah, we just named it.
It used to be kind of a private driveway.
Yeah.
I don't have that right away with, but yes, probably 20, 24 feet wide.
The truck turning movements and the impact to the stop sign and that, I guess, is what concerns me. I guess if there's truck traffic in and out, that it's coming out, I assume, the kind of the back way there, if it can't get through, are we having, when this is parked, are we having the same trouble with snow removal that we just talked about on Cedar? You know, I mean, if the users can't get through, and they can't get down, you know, I mean, we have to be able to service that street, and they have to be able to access their property further down. And, you know, this is probably not a 24/7 type problem, but, you know, I also think that if, you know, you don't know when the peak time is going to be that this is going to crop up. So I think I could support a restriction there just because it's so narrow and there's seems to be conflict between larger vehicles and passenger vehicles.
Yes, Alder Henke?
We're just looking on the railroad side, right? There'd still be parking in front of his place.
I guess anything is on the, you know, the way it was agendized, anything, you know, is on the original request was for no parking on both sides for the entire length, but that could be.
I can deal with the people in my yard. It's when they're across the street and I'm having an issue, then they like attack. So I can't really talk to people when they're parking over there because they become combative. So, and I try to tell them, hey, the semis come through here, you might get hit, there's issues.
I got a question. So I'm just maybe
Yes,
this is
Alder
more to
Gainey.
the design of this park. It's not that old, but it looks like there's a grass strip on the in front of the sidewalk. It could potentially be easier to make some parking for the park there. It seems like a very poorly thought out design for this park to have no parking. And I don't know if that, I mean, that's I guess planning and future thoughts, but we've invented this problem. We've invited this problem by that design of the park, in my opinion.
It's a neighborhood park though, right? Isn't it contemplated that most of the people are arriving on foot?
Right.
I mean,
It
it's a
was-
tot lot.
yes.
It's not a
Right.
full-fledged park, right?
Correct. It was a remnant parcel that community development bought or got access to, and right, it was a neighborhood park. The thought was most people are going to walk to it from the neighborhood and really not draw from other areas for parking. At
So
the
if they're
time.
walking, they don't need a park. So we could, I would support no parking there.
Yes, Alder Henke?
I'll make a motion to approve this item as it's listed in the agenda item. It says on Excelsior Drive, south of Single. Oh, I just read that again.
That would be on both sides of the street then, where it's indicated in the map?
Yeah, I saw the south and I thought it only meant the west side, or the far side.
I think both sides almost make sense. So if they're already parking on his lawn and he's got little kids out in the yard, his side's just as bad as the other side. It feels like if, you know, I mean, it's no less dangerous to have them all park and then park across his driveway. I mean, that's worse. I mean, the no parking on the other side may force more of them over onto his side,
All right,
right? I don't know.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
seems like
I'll
we
finish
just
my-
create another problem.
I'll finish my motion. To approve no parking on Excelsior Drive, south of Single Ave.
I'll second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve no parking between Excelsior Drive and South Single Avenue. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes unanimously. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay, item 7, discussion and possible action on alternatives relating to improvements in underdeveloped city right-of-way adjacent to 1100 Highland Avenue Boulevard, including the possible grant of an easement agreement with Matthew Aschenbrenner and Kristen Aschenbrenner. Who wants to take this? This is, again, isn't it?
Yeah, this is the tea house thing, right?
Yes.
This is the tea house thing
This is the
again.
tea house thing. So I don't know that I want to explain a lot unless some people have, there's a lot of information in the packet that I'm assuming you have looked at. So if you have questions, Tara wrote a staff memo. Tara or I could answer questions.
What's with the, we had a letter in there from Rick now. Is he going to be wanting to assess that to that property who, I mean, if this, it's built on city land, but I saw something about the assessor. Is he going to want to assess that and assess that to the people who built the tea house and add it to their property taxes? Is that it, or?
Feels like you should.
Well, that's what Rick's memo says, that if you look at it carefully, he says he is going to pick those improvements up and assess them to 1100 Highland Park. And that the value of the land is nominal, as far as I'm assessed.
Yes, Lisa.
Thank you. I feel like we only have two choices. We either, because it's up, right? I mean, they've moved forward. So we either grant the easement for what's there and then assess it, or we don't grant the easement, and then the inspection department has to march over there and tell them to tear it down. So, I mean, I feel like it's either or. There's not a whole lot of compromise because they've gone forward and erected the stuff there now, and it's done. So that limits our options as far as restricting the size. I mean, we don't, it's there. I mean, we either, let it be or don't, so.
I don't know if there's any residents that are here to speak to this. Are you in? So I did speak to one of the residents. I didn't know if they were going to be here or not.
There. Would you like to come forward, ma'am?
I like visuals. So I made these. Some of it you have, the top sheet you don't, but for ease of purpose, so you don't have to sift through that big huge packet that I received, I until October 8th. When
Ma'am, please state your name and address, please, for the
sorry,
record.
I'm sorry. My name is Kathy Iceland, and I'm the next door neighbor of Matthew and Kristen, and I'm at 1010 Everest Boulevard.
Okay.
Okay, until Saturday, October 8th, when I received that packet of information, I was unaware of this situation. And when I read through the packet, for the most part, I thought, okay, this is a good idea, except when I saw Lou Larson's comments about this seems to be neighbor against neighbor. And that was upsetting to me because I don't want this to be the Hatfields versus the McCoys. And I felt that I've done everything that I could to reassure Ashenbrunners when I discovered this that I would not petition to have it removed. Also, it states that I'm the one that reported it. It wasn't. When I purchased the property, the neighbors couldn't really tell me who owned what, or as far as the fence went, a little bit. And my other neighbors were, well, I think it's this line, or maybe that brick, or that bush. And so I thought I should have the property surveyed. And so when I had the property surveyed, my surveyor discovered the encroachment. He didn't discuss it with me first. He went to the engineering department and the powers to be and reported it then. Initially, when you come apart this situation, they have it vacated, and then half goes to each of the adjacent properties. And so that's what I was first told. And I was like, yippee skippy, because as you can see on that, my lot is very shallow. So I thought, okay, we get a little bit of land. Then when I met with the engineering department to find out about the options and exactly what this was about, I was told that I would not get half, that it would go all the way to Ashenbrunners because they have 8 city lots that were the Huntington subdivision, and 11th Street in 1918, when the subdivision was formed, that goes to them. They also have a lot that's part of the subdivision that's I'm in, and that was 1920. And so because it's a rare thing, most of the time it goes to both, it wouldn't. So at that time, I asked what my options were. One of them was that have it vacated and then purchase the property from Aschenbrenners. It seems a little more advantageous, except that they put that stuff on there, that it would help my lot a little more because their lot is a very large parcel. I had mentioned to Aschenbrenners, could we meet and discuss the options, but they never got back to me. So in lieu of that, if that didn't come through, I felt it was more to my protection having the city own it rather than have it vacated. And I didn't decide that out of malice. I did it because I didn't want another shed going up or a fence going up because it obscures, the flow of the backyard. So I wanted to make sure that this doesn't look like I'm not a nice neighbor. And I'm also here in support. If you want to go ahead with doing the easement, that's fine with me. The only stipulation that I would have is that on that contract that the lawyer wrote up for the easement, the last part says that it would be transferable by owner, and I would prefer that would be omitted, that say Aschenbrenners would move, then it would revert, there would not be an easement, or the easement would be for my property. Because as you can see, that part is right behind me with a shallow lot. Not that I want it now for more maintenance, I'm a widow, but I would like to have that revisited in case, you know what I'm saying, that you don't totally make it for the owner, because right now the owner's invested in that stuff, and someone, if he sells the house to, might not be interested in that. Oh, and here's the other thing, to show that I really went out of my way not to have that shed put down on June 6th, because I did not know that Bill had sent a request to the Aschenbrenners to take it down. On June 6th, I met with my plumber and his excavator. My house is 83 years old. I was concerned that there were clay pipes, and I wanted to find out the status and condition of the sewer because the house has needed tons of repair. They told me, good news, the pipes are intact, and even better news, they're iron and they're not clay. And so I had already talked to, I think his name is Eric, in engineering, and because the excavator said the trench would be 5 feet deep, 3 feet wide, and it would take a good part of the bamboo hut and some of the landscaping. And he said he wanted me to contact someone at the zoning, because he said they put that bamboo structure right over the sewer lines. And so when I found out how much damage it would do to that piece of landscaping, I called back and I said, don't call him up. I've decided not to do it. I have iron pipes. They're way better than clay. But know this, they're 83 years old. So eventually the hut might have to go. And when I read over all the other things, it does stipulate in there that you would have that. So, but again, I'm trying to be a good neighbor, and it didn't look like I was a good neighbor when it was saying I reported and I objected to the everything. And so I want this to have a peaceful resolution. So that's my only thing, is that I wouldn't want it transferable by owner. And you can see by those pictures why it's more advantageous for me to have down the road the easement.
Thank you. Oh, and ma'am, I'm Lou Larson, and I didn't mean to offend you.
Oh, you didn't offend me, you just concerned me.
Oh, I'm
There's
sorry.
a
Okay.
difference.
All right.
But thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got
Alder
it.
Denny.
Okay, So the city utilities go through this area.
There is a sanitary sewer line underneath this, yes.
So then we will always maintain an easement there in case.
Well, it's city right away, so we don't need an easement in our own right of way.
Yeah.
Got it, okay. And then I drove up there this afternoon before the meeting, and from the road, it looks like there's another outbuilding being built there. Is that a permitted structure, and does that affect this in any way? I don't
I'm
know
not
if it's a
sure.
garage
Maybe,
or.
maybe Mr. Ashenbrenner can speak to that.
Yeah, so I guess for the first comment, or to put some historical perspective to this, this basically came about because there was a fence that existed that Kathy wanted to take down, and I allowed her to take it down. And as part of taking the fence down and doing her own landscaping, she came up with the surveying. As it relates to the letter that was sent to us, the hard part is there's just a bunch of legal issue because restoration, meaning destruction of the area and restoration to previous, I don't know what that means. And one of the biggest issues is that there is a paved walkway, which you can see through a lot of the overhead images, that likely was built by the Woodsons in 1954. And so it's not, when I bought the property, there was a fence that seemed very obvious to enclose into my property. And if the easement were to occur, it would always be into my property. None of it went into 1010. The fence was always been part of either the city property or our property. And then it essentially was overgrown landscaping that we cut back multiple times. And because of essentially invasive species growth, we decided to just upgrade the landscaping to it. And because there was a natural walkway that was there that was stone, and there was already a fence that was established, there was the assumption that the property was ours in full because we had no idea that there was any city property that was through there. And as you can see from all the historical mapping, I mean, our whole backyard was divided up because it was 8 city blocks. And so, I mean, there's not just that one area of city sewer. There's city sewer. You guys have been there to raise manhole covers in my property. So when we went forward with our landscaper, I asked if there was permanent structures being built. He said no. And so that's why all the permits were pulled, because he said, we don't need permits. It would just be a good faith. And I was like, you know, if you have to do it, then do it. But if you don't, proceed forward with the project. And that's what happened in 2017. So, and that's what led to where we're at now. So, I mean, I have no issues at all if somebody needs to come in to do repairs of the sewer. Not a problem whatsoever. But to say that things have to be restored, I had a lot of questions of that. Does it have to be grass? Does it have to be stone? There's a bunch of stuff that is there besides just the hut. And then my question after that is if I have to destroy that, then I would expect the city to maintain it. I mean, if it's city property and the city wants to maintain it, then maintain it. But otherwise, it's just going to turn into an overgrown grass/weed patch. I think whether you do or don't deed it, I don't know how, from a legal perspective, you deed it to us now, but then if we sell the property, you deed it to 1010. That's something for Ann Jacobson to decide. I mean, I don't know how that's even possible. So that's kind of the historical perspective of it is that the whole improvement of it was done through a professional landscaper who didn't pull permits, obviously mea culpa. There's no issues that we have whatsoever. My wife and I have, once it's eased to us, that we would have the structures be assessed and then we pay tax on it. I mean, ultimately, it would be land that would be ours, and then therefore the property would claim to be ours. So there's really no issue with that at all. As part of our meeting that was there, the permits guy, what's his name?
That'd be Bill Hebert in zoning.
Yeah. I asked Bill about a treehouse, and Bill said he gave me the dimensions of a treehouse, and if it was less than 16 feet high, that we could build it without a permit. So there's a treehouse in our backyard. That's what we were referring to. Also, since all of this, there has been landscaping done at 1010, which you probably saw, meaning there's fresh landscaping at 1010, and that landscaping that's in 1010 also encroaches onto city land that's there. So this is a mea culpa of not only us, but also 1010, because all the landscaping that got done this summer, there's part of that is spilling over into the said property. I don't have a problem with that at all, but as this was going on, 1010 did landscaping to it without any permits. So clearly people upgrade their backyards and they upgrade their property we get permits when we feel necessary, and things that don't have any permanency to it, I guess what we define as like, retaining walls and stuff like that, permits weren't granted. So that's kind of where we're at with this.
Thank you. Alder Rasmussen.
I have a question. One of the things, because we had actually, this committee on its first consideration, agreed to grant the easement in perpetuity because the structure does have some permanence and an investment had been made there. But then when we got to council, one of the things that came out in the discussion was, and I think we did not discuss that here in SISM, was that at the time of the construction or shortly prior to that, Revi inquired as to the status of that situation with the city, and I believe they were told that there was a right-of-way and that they were not allowed to build there, and then proceeded anyway, sans permit. So, I mean, not the property owner's fault necessarily, but I think that the contractor was, and to correct me if I'm wrong, I heard the contractor was aware that that was right-of-way and that they were not to build there, and then the tea house went up anyway. So I think that's maybe what we wanted to talk about here.
I believe you're right, Alder Rasmussen, and I believe that's why we're back here today.
Right. So, I mean,
Yeah, and you can see the one, because Revi sent to you guys as part of they show where their proposed T-hut build is. I mean, that's what's really hard, because I talked with Dave about this, and they had a surveyor out there, but there was no surveyor of the actual lot line. Let me see what page that is, because I saw that and I was like, where they showed their proposed quote-unquote structure build, I was like, it's on the edge of what they thought was the edge of our property, and they thought the edge of our property was the fence line. And so I can understand how there was all that confusion that was there, and that was nothing that was ever brought to either Kristen or I's attention. There was the packet that you guys have here, and you can see where there's that shaded yellow area of the proposed T-hut. I mean, they clearly have it up to what they think is the property line. And again, there was a fence that was there, which is why I think they assumed that was the property line, and then they would have assumed the right-of-way went into 1010. Because where their shaded yellow area is not at all what the question ever was. It was essentially the area that was the easement area, so. And when Kathy brought it to my attention this summer was the first time that I actually realized that there was even an easement that was there. I mean, it's between us and between 1012, because it goes right through the middle of 1012. You as a person living in that neighborhood have no idea that there's city property there, because 1012, you can see that their parcel is just completely bisected by it.
Right.
And it's just a grass area that they maintain, so.
Well, the fact that it looks like a backyard is certainly understandable, but I also know, and I guess what troubles me a little bit is that just knowing Revi does an awful lot of work. I mean, Revi does an awful lot of work in the city. They've done an awful lot of work with and for the city. And we all know that Dave is smart enough to know when to call City Hall and ask questions. And clearly he did. And he was told what was going on. And anytime you work close to the lot line, whether it's right-of-way or a neighbor, you always have to check to make sure you don't have setback issues. Because whatever you build, you have to leave yourself enough space around it to maintain it without encroaching on your neighbor. Just in case the neighbor would put up a fence or there's a feud or whatever. You have to, you can only build so close to the lot line without a variance even. So, I feel like he knew that he had to call City Hall. He did those steps, but then, did he not like the answer he got? I don't know what played out in between, the inspection staff or the zoning staff and Revi, but even in this original plan, it's very, very close to the lot line, regardless of what the terrain looks like. So I feel like they knew that and they went ahead anyway. Well, that damage now is done. It's here. So now we have to decide, are we going to allow it or not allow it? I think that the safeguard within the easement that says if at some point we have to get into work on the line, it has to be removed at the owner's expense makes complete sense. He's agreeable to that. Right. But now it's come down to a matter of we either make them tear out the investment or we don't. And I feel like it's a yes or no choice for us now.
And you guys had no permits from 1010 this summer, correct? That's what I'm saying. We're just owners who improve we're owners who improve our yard, and it's a fault of Dave and Revi, but there's other landscapers that have been in that same area as recently as a few weeks ago that just finished up, and so
Well, I don't doubt that it happens.
obviously this happens all the time.
I
where
don't
people
doubt
just
that it
have
happens
landscape
all the
work,
time. I
so,
mean, every
yeah.
time we go to rebuild a street where there's no boulevard and no sidewalk, we find people's landscaping and retaining walls and sprinkler heads in the path too.
Yes.
So-
Ma'am, did you want to come forward again?
I had the lot surveyed and the surveying markers stayed up, except one that was put in that appeared to be in Aschenbrenner's yard, and that was removed. My landscaper stayed within the boundaries of those markers, and there is a wash of shale that we put on the back of the landscaping. When I talked to Bill, the setbacks, and somebody else, we had to be 3 feet from the lot lines, which we were. The shale that runs right to the edge of 11th Street, Abandon, is to keep the erosion from, there's no bushes, there's no, everything is 3 feet from that, with the bushes and my rocks and my things. There is a drainage pipe that goes off the back, and for the drainage to go, because you can see my property slopes deep. So what we did is we backed that sloping area with crushed rock. And my landscaper had even mentioned to Matthew when we nicked one of his lighting things that we would get back there and do that, and that Kathy was in keeping with his landscaping in that the rock that we would put along there would match his boulders. So that was additional money to invest, so that side looks nice and blends with theirs, but we are not encroaching on the lot lines. And as far as building permits and things, I have been calling you guys 90 zillion times to say, do I need a permit for that? And as long as I maintained this, your drainage and stuff is totally different. So we were within the guidelines, and all you have to do is talk to Rich over at the building inspectors. I know them all by first names because I had a very deceptive contractor who lied to me about building permits, and so no, we're code.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm with Alder Rasmussen. I think we either make the decision here, either it stays or it goes, and
I'll make a motion that we approve the easement with the clear communication that there be no additional construction in the right-of-way. What's there is there. We're going to allow what's there, but no more, and nothing new. Just to get a discussion going on the floor here.
I'll second that, just to get the conversation going.
we have a motion to leave the building as approved and as is for now, and a second. Is there any other further discussion?
Well, would it be leaving the building, or is it approving an easement?
Approve.
My motion is to grant the easement as it was defined in the documents that we were provided. But along with that, no additional construction should be allowed within the confines of that easement. So the easement should be worded that with whatever exists on the land today, that's it, no more.
Okay, we have a motion to approve Lisa's, gosh, I'm fried. We have a motion and a second to approve the buildings as it is with no additional construction.
Yeah.
All those in favor signify
Luke,
by...
can I just add one comment? Oh. So I guess I'm glad we did bring this forward, because my interpretation of this originally was probably a little more negative than what I heard tonight. So it does seem like there were a lot of well-intended activity going on here that led to this. So I think if Tara's comfortable that the city is whole in this, and we become protected, I would agree to this.
Well, I don't know what you mean by whole. It's it's not up to me to decide whether or not there's any additional cost other than the assessments I outlined as best I could in the memo what your options are, but it's not a lawyer's job to say, well, you should charge this or charge that, or, you know.
Incorrect legal terminology
Yeah, okay.
potentially, but we're not exposed to additional costs due to this. And then if there's additional tax revenue to receive, we're pursuing that.
There's no cost to the city to do this. The only thing I would like clarification on in Lisa's motion is to approve the easement that you were given, which includes the restriction that you wanted. But the one neighbor brought up the item about, does it go to the next owner? I put that in there. It's a substantial improvement, you know, I mean.
For all practical purposes, I feel like it has to, because the only other option is if you were going to then remove the easement, if the property sells, that action would then include, prior to the sale, the removal of whatever's there.
It just,
You know,
it's
and
a waste.
if you're going to
Either
sell the
wasting it
property in its
now or
entirety,
wasting it later.
yeah, I feel like it's going to have to exist in perpetuity, and knowing that the easement is granted for the way it looks right now, and it's not to look any different, I think there's a safeguard there for both neighbors.
Alder Hinkie?
Is the easement just for the building, like just that little square?
No, the easement would be, I guess, it would be for that, pretty much encompasses that whole right-of-way.
That entire right-of-way?
I guess
Yes.
that was the confusion I felt that emerged after the last
At
CISA
council.
meeting. Was it just for that little box? But it is, if you look at, attached to the easement is a drawing noted as Exhibit 2-1, which you may not be able to see very well, but it is for the entire red box. That would be the easement, to allow the boulders.
So
and
all the surrounding, like this is
and
the plan, so all the surrounding?
It's the whole thing. The
Okay.
whole easement, the whole right-of-way as it exists on this gentleman's property.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? We have a vote, we have, Lisa, would you like to explain your motion, please, again?
Sure. So the motion was to grant the easement as it was presented, allowing for what's been constructed in the right-of-way to date, but no additional construction to be contemplated.
And the second was made by Alder Hinkie. So all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 No.
Alder Denny?
Oh, I was an aye this time.
Okay. Then the motion passes 3-1. Okay. Onward to item number 8. Discussion and possible action on final approval. Oh, wait. Discussion and possible action on final approval of Assessor's Plat Number 7, 901 Town Line Road, 1309 Torney Avenue, 1315 Torney Avenue, and 1321 Torney Avenue. This is Alan.
Sure, so just for the background, you know, when we are reconstructing Torney, and when we went to do the plans, we noticed that the lots did not match up, or the plat that was out there did not match up with the existing lots. So we did the assessor's plat. There's a flow chart. Dave Hempner, our city surveyor, did it. So, you know, it's been, we're down to the point now where it says plat approved by local unit of government, because we sent out the notices. There were no suits filed, so that means that nobody has any issues with it. So we're at this point, we're at the point where we would approve the plat.
Move to approve.
Second.
Move to approve the plat was been made by Alder Rasmussen and seconded by Alder Hinkie. Any further discussion? Okay, then we will have a vote on it. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. And that passes unanimously. Item number 9, discussion and possible action on sale of 123 West Thomas Street. Eric?
Yeah, so if you remember, this came to a previous CISM meeting. It was labeled as 1300 Cleveland Avenue, because that's how it showed up in GIS. Subsequently, it was determined that this piece right along West Thomas Street actually has its own address of 123 West Thomas Street. So this is being brought back with the correct address, for the public and the open records, so.
So this is the piece, the St. Vinny's, the sign at St. Vinny's?
Yeah, so their sign is on this piece, this parcel, so St. Vincent de Paul had approached community development and asked about this piece and if the city was willing to sell it at all, and so that's where this was initiated, so we're kind of starting the process here to see if CISM is willing to.
I initiated the delay last month just because the address was wrong, so I'll
Yeah.
move to approve at this point.
I'll second.
Thank you. Motion to approve this was made by Alder Rasmussen and a second by Alder Hinkie. Any further discussion?
I do have a question. I have a question, Lou. Just power on here. Okay, my question is regarding zoning. So it's currently residential. What is this piece owned by St. Vincent de Paul, and does it legally just transfer zoning to them, or is there a zoning consideration here? Is it the piece in question is zoned residential? I don't know what St. Vincent de Paul is.
I don't know either. I don't know what that is.
It's just a little strip of land in front of the building. I don't know that you could even have any kind of residential there.
Well, it's maybe just a minor technical issue, but was just questioning, does it get grandfathered, or does it?
Well, the zoning is what the zoning is under the zoning code. Is that your question?
Well, so we're going to give this piece to St. Vincent de Paul. Currently, it's sitting on 1300 Cleveland Avenue as residential.
Well, it's got its own address, though.
It's got its own address now.
Oh,
Yeah.
so it's zoned. It's zoned with the St. Vincent de Paul piece, or with the Cleveland piece?
I don't know that. It could be zoned something different, but it has its own address, and I'm assuming its own PIN, so that if it is zoned something different than St. Vincent de Paul, then,
Okay.
It is. I mean, it just zoned whatever it
Right.
is. Nothing about the zoning changes because the ownership is changing.
Other than that, it's abutted to their property, so then I just want to make sure if there's an assumption that they would gain this property zoned differently or zoned as their current operation.
You have to get approval to have the zoning changed. I'm not aware of any petition to change the zoning. When property transfers, even if it's somebody's home, it stays what it's zoned.
Yeah, okay, I understand that.
It just
Okay.
is what it is. If
Right.
it's zoned residential, it stays residential. If it's zoned
Okay.
industrial, it stays industrial. It just, whatever the zoning is today, it is tomorrow. Does that make sense?
Sure. So then it doesn't necessarily take on the adjoining
No, just, no.
piece.
No.
Got it.
No, you'd have to go through a rezone in order to do that, but his process and procedures.
So, it says on the bottom, staff recommends this property be offered to other city departments, and if there are no objections, have the property advertised for bids. So, this property isn't automatically just going to go to St. Vinny's. It's got to go through some red tape first.
Right, yeah. So if you look at my staff memo, it kind of outlines the process. So the first is I would notify all the departments and see if anybody's interested in that. And then if it isn't, then we would move ahead with the sale of the real estate through a bidding process. Set a minimum bid. I had a recommendation of $750 if the committee's okay with that. And then we'd put that out on advertisement. If those bids then would be opened at the Board of Public Works, and then we'd follow the process from there.
So then the motion that Alder Rasmussen made is
To begin this
to
process.
begin this process.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that, so.
Eric, that's the same process we follow with disposing of remnants, right?
It
Similar?
is,
Okay.
yes. Yep, it
That
is.
makes sense.
Yep.
Okay, then all those in favor of the motion of moving forward with this, with the staff recommendation, and the second by Alder Henke, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that passes unanimously. Item number 10, discussion and possible action on stormwater maintenance agreement with Apogee Wausau Group Incorporated at 7500 Stewart Avenue.
This is just our typical stormwater maintenance agreement for an expansion on line tech and stormwater improvements. We recommend approval.
Thank you, TJ.
I'll move to approve.
Motion to approve by Alder Henke.
Oh, I'd second that, I'm sorry.
Second by Alder Denny. All those in favor of the approval of the stormwater maintenance agreement for Apogee signify by saying aye.
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 And that passes unanimously. Item 11, discussion and possible action on 17th Avenue roadway layout. And who is,
I'll take care of this one.
okay,
All right, so we are currently working on the redesign of 17th Avenue, reconstruction from Stewart Avenue to just past Elm. And we have a couple alternatives that we'd like to present to CISM and then see which direction we should head with. So our first option is a raised median with concrete curb separating the lanes of travel. This raised median would continue throughout the entire stretch of the reconstruction area with left turn lanes at major intersections. With all of our options, we do propose adding sidewalk on the north side. That does not change throughout any of the options. The only thing that really changes is the median. So our first option is a raised median throughout. Our second option is a raised median throughout except at Starbucks. We know that that is a highly trafficked area. So if we did have a raised median through that area, that would force people heading north on 17th to take a U-turn at 18th to come back to Starbucks, which could possibly create conflicts. But the raised median would keep traffic flowing more smoothly. At least that's the concept behind it. And then the third option is basically just leaving it as is with 2 lanes of travel in both directions and then a center turn lane throughout the entire length of the project. We initially thought that the raised median would be the best option just to limit the amount of left turn conflicts in this project, but we analyzed the traffic data and the crash data, and we really didn't see any reason to change what's out there. You know, there's very few traffic accidents, and the traffic accidents that did occur would not have changed if there was a raised median or if anything was different out there. So our recommendation is to leave that center turn lane because it allows the most access for the businesses, for Starbucks, and then there's also the motel that is on the west side of 17th Avenue and the small business right across from the motel.
I guess a couple things I want to point out. Like TJ did say, we are adding, any of the options does propose sidewalk on the west side, which obviously increases pedestrian mobility. There's a lot, you know, there's quite a few pedestrians. I did notice people are walking from the hotel, and there's a possibility for future development here. So I think that's a good thing for the pedestrians. But so how we kind of got that is There's no sidewalk on the west side now, but some of the lanes, we've decreased the lane widths. I think they were 14 and 12. And
Yeah, the outer lanes were 14.
14, so we decreased those to 12 and 12. And then that center turn lane, we narrowed that down to 13 feet, which is still acceptable per design standards. So what that does is that allowed us to, a little bit of a road diet on the road to get that sidewalk in on the west side.
Yes.
Thank you.
Lisa.
So, thank you. I agree that the best option is not raised median, only because that creates right-in, right-out situations. And even now, there is an element of that in that parcel that the Starbucks building sits on. When you go to leave that building, you can't turn left and go out of there unless you're way at the north driveway. So when you come out the south side from the Starbucks drive-through, right turn is your only option, and people complain about that quite often. So I think if we redesign it per option 3, which is really what's there today, that also with that center lane allows a larger number of cars to get out of the way when they're trying to turn into the drive-through during the peak times at Starbucks, which the neighborhood has complained about backups and stuff there. In fact, I think they've even tried to redesign the sweep that their drive-through takes on the private property side to get more cars in at a time, because it's been problematic, really bad in the morning and then late in the day. So, and allowing the flexibility for the businesses to get people in and out with mountable median is always a plus. If it's no more dangerous, I mean, if the crash stats are such that we're not having a problem with it, I would advocate that we keep that. So, option 3, I guess, do you need a motion? Do we need to take action on it tonight, or are you looking for direction to design something to a higher percentage?
I think we're looking for, a direction from this committee, because this is going to move forward quickly if we want to bid this in January.
Right.
So,
So I would move that we accept option 3.
Yeah, I'll
Alder
second
Hanky?
that. I'll second that. I've got some comments.
Okay, a motion has been made to accept option 3 on the 17th Avenue project. Alder Hinkie?
Thanks. Right now, where Elm Street comes in there, the crosswalk is on the north side, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Would that stay there? It's not on the drawing. Would there be 4 crosswalks there now instead of just the one or the 2 that are there now?
We will be upgrading the signals there, so yes, there will be crosswalks on all legs.
Okay.
Good. With the extra housing that's coming there, I think that's going to help.
well,
No,
you have it drawn, so
Correct, yeah.
we would have a crosswalk on the south side.
On the south side, not on the north side. To get that, this would be the northwest quadrant to work, we're running out of real estate there, so we can't really, unless we purchase real estate to have that there. And we think that, to make that, I just think, we'd have to purchase real estate if we did want something on that north side.
The answer to your question is that a crosswalk would be on the south side, and the redesign is where we have it shown now.
As drawn.
Correct.
Okay. And I'm fine with that. That north side kind of goes to the middle of nowhere right now anyway.
Right.
We walk down to try and get to the grocery store from time to time, and you end up in a rock garden there. So, yeah. I like it.
Is there any significant cost differences between the selections here?
Yeah, option 3 would be the cheapest, just because, that center median has a lot of concrete, and with that center median, it adds the curb for the raised median, but then also what we put between the curb section and that raised median area, we could have grass, but then do we add irrigation? Do we have it all concrete? That adds a lot of cost and consideration. So the third option is the cheapest as well.
Okay. I think I concur with that. It's kind of a steep hill there. Is the runoff a consideration for this design? That could be an issue coming up 17th?
As far as stormwater?
You're right.
But we haven't had any complaints recently that I know of, so we would maintain that same runoff.
Okay.
Okay, any further discussion? Motion has been made and seconded to approve option 3. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 And that 2 passes unanimously. Okay, item number 12, stormwater utility presentation.
Do you want to dim the lights up there? And then,
Uh,
there we go.
You may want to go take a seat on the side so you can see the.
I can see here.
Oh, you can? Okay.
All right, well, I'll get started. So each spring, we have to submit our MS4 annual report to the DNR, and then shortly thereafter, I come to CISM to report on our activities that were reported. And each year, for the last couple of years, I've been advocating that we discuss the possibility of a stormwater utility, because in the near future, in 2024, the Wisconsin River Basin total maximum density loading for phosphorus will come into effect, which will create a burden on the city to start implementing different best management practices to limit the amount of phosphorus that is discharged into the Wisconsin River. So this year, CISM asked me to come in front and provide a presentation, so here I am. Next slide. Yep. So first, what is a stormwater utility? Well, it's a method to create revenue through fees to pay for stormwater activities. It's very similar to our water utility, where these fees go directly to stormwater and nothing else. These activities can be maintenance, capital improvements, permitting, administration activities, you name it, anything related to stormwater. And then the fees, right now, stormwater is 100% paid through the general budget, through the levy. So it puts the burden on, distributed throughout everybody. Nobody pays more depending on how much stormwater they discharge. So the advantages of a stormwater utility: it creates a stable, dedicated, and equitable way of funding stormwater improvements. It's stable because we know that the money is coming in, we know where it's coming from. We're able to plan long range rather than making short-term decisions and being more reactive the way we are now, where if we have a stable fund, we can be proactive and look long-term and see where our deficiencies are and plan for it. It's dedicated because anything that comes into this stormwater fund has to be used to pay for stormwater. And then it's equitable because the largest generators of pollutants and stormwater will pay the higher amount to the utility, and those that don't generate a whole lot of stormwater and have small impervious areas will pay less. So going on to the funding portion, I discussed a little bit of where that funding comes from. It all comes from the levy. A stormwater fund, the initial dollar amount that is funded for that first year of the utility would come from the levy, but the levy would also be reduced that same amount. So there would be no increase in tax base, but who pays that tax into the utility would change. And that utility can be set up to pay for any and all stormwater activities, or just capital improvements, or work towards meeting TMDL compliance. So it can be very flexible. Ideally, we would have it fund all stormwater activities, but that is an option. So I included this pie chart in the bottom. I stole this from a 2005-2006 study that was done for the city when we were exploring a stormwater utility. I just wanted to point out, that the revenue for the city through taxes is 60% for residential. A stormwater utility would only be funded by 38% of the residents, or through residential property. So you can see, most residential properties and small commercial properties would see their taxes reduced, not raised, through a stormwater utility. Getting back to why a stormwater utility is needed, I touched on it when I opened up about that TMDL coming through and the large fiscal responsibility that the city is likely to see. But also, we have an aging infrastructure that, every day we seem to get complaints or we stumble upon broken storm sewer or some type of improvement that needs to be made. Also included some figures. This comes from our MS4 reporting, so this doesn't include, everything in the nooks and crannies of what goes into our stormwater management, but it's a good idea and a starting point. In 2020, we spent around $2 million. In 2021, it was $1.5 million, and this is mainly on maintenance and capital improvements. So in 2019, the EPA passed the TMDL, and then it'll go into effect in 2024. And our responsibility will be to reduce our total phosphorus loading that is discharged by the city by 10% every permit cycle, which would be every 5 years. So I'll show you what that means on the next slide. In 2018, we did a stormwater study for the city of Wausau, and that's where I got this chart from. This was an anticipation for the TMDL being approved. So we had the pretty much what was going to be required by the TMDL. And I'll highlight this last box, which shows how much phosphorus is discharged by the city. So without any controls, no stormwater ponds, no catch basin sumps, we would discharge 6,400 pounds of phosphorus. But because we do have stormwater ponds and best management practices that reduce the pollutants, we discharge around 1,800 pounds. And that's only a reduction of 28.1%, where our goal is 68.8%. So we need to reduce our entire phosphorus discharge by another 2,600 pounds, or 260 pounds every 5 years. So enough of the statistics. So how do we get there? Well, we started this year. I brought forth a grant. It was a construction grant, a 50-50 match, $150,000 maximum match, so a total of $300,000. Anything above that $300,000 would be paid for by the city. The project we selected was determined, or was one of the options that was identified in that 2018 study that was completed. This is the Strawberry Fields dry detention basin conversion. Our estimated cost is around $470,000, and this is only going to reduce our pollutant loading by 14 pounds per year. This is a fraction of what's needed. So you can see what type of money we're looking at to get to compliance. This is a drop in the bucket, but this is our most efficient way with the real estate that we have and the avenues we have currently. But with a utility, that opens up a whole lot of other ways that we can try to reach compliance. One of the ways is because of these large industrial users that we have and these large properties that have been here before any MS4, we can create partnerships with them to where we can reduce their fees if they create ponds. Right now, they can just keep resurfacing their driveways and their large 5-acre lots without any repercussions. But if we have this TMDL, they'll be paying much larger fees to where it would entice them to create some type of pond or a BMP to help reduce their loading and help us reach compliance. So this is really a much needed asset. So last and in summary, a couple of points. The stormwater utility would ensure that everybody pays their fair share. Residents in small commercial properties would see their tax reduced. Large properties that install BMPs can see their fee reduced as well, as long as they're helping us reach compliance. The TMDL compliance is going to have a large fiscal future responsibility. The initial levy adjustment would be 1-for-1 with the stormwater utility, so no increase in taxes, just who pays them. And then last, the city is eligible for a grant through the DNR to help set up a utility or to do a similar study that was completed in 2005 and 2006 to assess what our current needs are, what our future needs are. And this grant is coming up in 2023. The deadline to apply is April 15th. So if there is an appetite for a stormwater utility, this would be a great first step to apply for this grant and help us move forward. That's it. If there's any questions.
Question.
Yes.
So who's
Chair recognizes Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. And then, yep, so I'll say that I am a fan of this. I've been advocating that we create such a thing for a long time because what I see coming down the track with DNR and phosphorus regulations for some time now is a freight train that we don't have the money to pay for. And so when I first came on council, we were in every budget adding a line item to the engineering department's budget to comply with stormwater compliance. And then under the Walker administration down in Madison, they paused the dates of compliance, and that gave us some breathing room. But even with the leaf pickup and the street sweeping and everything that we've been doing, we still aren't taking out enough. And so someday when that, train comes steaming down the track again, short of some serious levy increases, we can't pay for what's going to be necessary. And this type of a utility will bring relief on the tax side to most of our constituents. Most of our constituents are single-family homeowners with small, hard surface footprints, and right now they're paying too much of the burden. And so, even though nobody likes new fees and whatever, the number one opponent of this, the first time it was considered, and I want to say it was considered in the early 2000s, was places that don't pay tax now, like churches and hospitals and some schools where they have parking lots that are a city block in size, and they pay zero. And then all of the single-family homeowners and all the small business owners that barely have any impervious surface get all of the burden tacked on them. And so this really is like a level playing field. If you have a parking lot that's a block in size, and you're creating this massive amount of runoff and paying zero, it will come time to pay their fair share. And when that bill comes, the fact that there's relief if they do something about that and trap this runoff in a pond, or now when we have new construction, we make people build retention ponds. Well, back then no one did, so they're all getting away with this, and they've been for decades. And so now with this new mandate, coming closer and closer, the time is coming where we have to do something, and this really will help most of our residential property owners in a way that, they're not getting any help right now if we continue to pay for it all out of the levy. And that keeps our mill rate higher than a lot of our neighboring municipalities. I think a couple of neighboring municipalities already have stormwater charges. And so that's giving them some relief. So when people move here and they say, well, my tax bill in Wausau would be this, but my tax bill, 5 miles down the street would be something else, it's because they have these tools in their toolbox and we don't. So this would really be a good thing for us.
Alder Denny, did you have something you would like to add?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Larson. Question, would this be administered through the city engineering department, or would we have a separate staff that would be considered the utility?
I think that's up in the air. I think typically the city would name a stormwater utility
Commission?
Or the head of the stormwater utility, somebody that would be responsible for it. So that's typically would be in engineering, I guess, but that's still up in the air too. I think there'd be some accounting, we'd have to figure out how the bills go out and that would be with the existing staff.
This study would go a long ways to help, shed light on what is needed and
Okay.
as far as staffing and everything else.
Because then I assume then all these retention ponds would be burden on the city to inspect and/or approve or engineer. Because I've seen some out there that are substandard. I don't know if they would pass a state inspection, but certainly it's an evolving science.
Well, ideally, this, with the stormwater utility, it would help entice these large producers of stormwater to create their own ponds. So they would be responsible for maintaining it themselves and, reducing their fees.
I can support the study, that's for sure.
Alder Henke, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, do we have any idea what the fees are going to be coming from the state?
Well, there's really not fees coming from the state, but I just, in this, I showed we were spending, estimated at $470,000 to get us, a fraction of
If
10%.
we fail compliance or if we don't meet our goals, is there a penalty? What's the penalty?
There is a clause in the TMDL in our permit that says working to the maximum extent practicable. So if you're showing an effort, I think, but what is an effort? It's in the eye of the beholder. There are no fees that I know of that they would impose on you if you do not meet it, but
Okay.
I don't want to find out.
Okay. And when you mention a utility, I just think of like a building or something going in, but this is just all administrative, correct? Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
A lot of this would be administered just like a water and sewer utility is now. So those fees would come in, those fees would be budgeted, so there'd be a revenue and expenses, just like the utility. The nice thing about it is that, as TJ said, it would be an even playing field for all of the buildings and connections and stuff within the city. And then it also establishes a fund to be used for planning purposes, so we can establish what's needed, meet future compliance needs as we move forward. It's very difficult right now. When we have large projects that come up, they take away from other infrastructure projects because they just kind of rise to the priority. Like when we have failed culverts or failed storm sewer in an intersection that costs over $100,000 on an emergency repair. It just, it takes away from other infrastructure projects, so.
Alder Rasmussen, you had something to add?
I just was thinking about that as he was talking about failed infrastructure, because I have an example of that in my district. We started out with what we thought was a little project on Randolph Street adjacent to Marathon Electric, and then the more they worked on it, they found out that now they need a 60-inch storm sewer. And that's a major project that we you could have a catastrophic failure there that causes you to lose 2 lanes of the road. So, now that, the way we sit today, that's an emergency expense that has to come out of, an emergency contingency fund, where if we had a utility, the utility would have funding to fix that stuff. So, absent the utility, we're left scrambling to figure out, a number of years ago, we had a sinkhole in the middle of 17th and Sherman. And, we had another one at, was it 3rd Avenue, and it was North 3rd Avenue, just north of Greeby's. And they had to open up the entire street. Maybe it was just past Union Avenue. And major, major expenses that we then have to find, emergency budget for. And then they're running into the finance committee for, help, contingency money right away. And that's stuff that you can't afford to let sit, so you have to pay for it. Where this, you can kind of plan for the unexpected, but you also plan for better inspection and maintenance before you get to the catastrophic failure point. So I feel like we could do a better job on both ends if we had a utility, which, absent that, we don't really have those funds available.
Any other discussion on the presentation?
No action. If there's an appetite for the study, I will, get a proposal and bring it forth.
Not on for action tonight, but I'd like to see the cost of the study, see a study plan.
Okay.
Get that?
Okay.
Yeah.
Item number 13, construction update for 2022 projects.
All right. So our first construction project was Project A, which is the water main and extension on campus in Burek. That is 100% complete. And then along with that was the reconstruction of Bugbee and replacement of utilities. That is moving along. Some delays. We're pouring curb today and tomorrow and then paving next week. Some of those delays were stemming from our material shortages, but the biggest hiccup there was just getting safe water samples in our water main. We had about 3 weeks where they were just, flushing as much as they could and rechlorinating the new lines that, for some reason, they just couldn't get safe samples. But we eventually did get that to pass, and they're moving forward. We plan on pouring curb this week and hopefully paving that by end of next week. Project B is 4th Avenue and 4th Street. 4th Avenue is from Bridge to Knox. That was paved on Monday, and they're raising manholes and landscaping this week, and should be wrapping that up here shortly. And then one item to note on that one, during the concrete process, vehicles have to park outside their driveway when we pour that curb, and then also follow up with sidewalk and driveways. Now, this project had 100% replacement of their sidewalk, so people had to park on side streets or on the road longer than typical projects, and we did have an issue with some vehicles being broken into that were brought to my attention. So our inspector got a hold of Cord to have some possible more patrols through that area, but just something to be aware of and something that we can look at in the future to see if there's something we can do to fix or reduce. But then 4th Street, right out here, McClellan to, not Washington, yes. That is 100% complete except for some restoration items. And then our final reconstruction project is over on Torney. That's moving forward. Curb should be poured on Monday and Tuesday, with the sidewalk following, and paved most likely the final week of October. So that's on schedule. And then my final update is the 72nd Avenue Business Campus Trail. We opened up bids last week. If you recall, we reduced the scope of that project. We redid some of the specifications in the boardwalk. However, the bids still came in extremely high. I spoke with the contractor. They're looking at some other engineering options that we can do to reduce that. They said that they could probably reduce it by around $350,000 if we changed a few more of the specifications. But that'll be coming to finance and then to council for approval in the budget modification.
One other project, this concrete pavement repair that you've probably been on Bridge Street. You've seen it's been on for about the last 2 weeks. It's got about 2 more weeks to do. And then the concrete pavement repair around City Hall here, 4th Street is done. That'll open up tomorrow. We're just waiting for some cure, but that'll open up tomorrow. And the last section will be, we're going to do the 1 block of grant in front of City Hall here. So that is anticipated to be closed, this 1 block of grant, tomorrow and all the next week. So, but 4th will be open for parking, and we are going to limit staff parking and personal vehicles on 4th, so that we did post some 15-minute parking on 4th too, so the visitors to City Hall can get access to City Hall.
All right, thanks, guys. Any comment on the construction updates? Then we have one last agenda item. Who wants to do it?
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Have a good night. Thanks.